right. Welcome to the show. This is the Otherppl podcast. I'm Brad Listi. I'm your host. I'm in Los Angeles, and it's good to be with you. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you're doing all right. Hope you're hanging on wherever you happen to be. I have a great episode for you today. My guest is Sonya Walger. Her debut novel is called Lion, and it's available from New York Review Books. I loved Lion. Loved it. It's a great novel. Great debut. Incredibly impressive. Sonya Walger is also an actress. She was on that show Lost. She's done a bunch of stuff. But she also happens to be a fabulous novelist. So it's an embarrassment of riches. And I'm excited to share that conversation momentarily. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but it's been busy. There's been a lot going on. I feel like I've been in a whirlwind. There was AWP. Steve Almond was here. Many of you will know him. He's guested on this show many times. He's a great writer, and he came through town. He stayed with me. We talked. We hung out and bonded. We had some man time. We had dinner, just the two of us. We shared our feelings. I got to see some of my local people, Melissa Broder, an old friend. I mean, she lives here in LA, but I got to see her out. I saw Mira Gonzalez in the wild, my friend and co-host on Brad and Mira for The Culture, the pop culture show that we do on Thursdays. Mira, who rarely leaves her house, actually emerged for an evening, and I saw her. I spotted her. It's like seeing a Yeti. And I got to see my friend Gene Morgan, proprietor of HTML Giant. Many of you in the literary community will know Gene and his lovely wife Jenny. I saw Luke B. Goebel, who I interviewed on this show years ago, and I don't think I'd ever met him before. Good to see him. Saw Christopher Zeischag, who I interviewed on this show a while back. There was a lot going on. And then I also did the first ever Brad Listi Death March, which if you follow me on social media, you might have seen the photos. But I was like, I got to do something. I didn't even go downtown. I don't understand AWP. I got to be honest. I don't get the trade show part of it. Like, I don't know. Like, I just go to the convention center and walk around. I don't want to do that. Why would I do that? I don't know. I'm not trying to have a bad attitude. I just don't understand. And then there was an event. I went to a reading at Stories, but I couldn't get in because some guy, and I think he was ill, like mentally ill, but he freaked out, got violent. So they sort of shut the back gate to the patio at Stories. So when I showed up, I see this guy, and he is humping a shoe in the alley behind Stories, like aggressively humping a shoe. Which, I've lived in Los Angeles for so long that I was like, okay, if that's how he feels about a shoe. I just kind of walked past him, but it turned out he was the guy who was causing trouble, and, blessings upon this guy. I think he just has, he blew a fuse. So I couldn't get into the reading, but I got to see my friends Hannah and Gabby. We just kind of talked in the bookstore, and then the reading ended, and I got to say hi to Jeff Rickley. I saw Chelsea Hodson, proprietress of Rose Books, great indie press. And then, I staged the Brad Listi Death March. I think it was on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and I wanted to do something. I felt like, okay, well, I'm here in Los Angeles. AWP is in Los Angeles. This is my hometown. I should do something to participate since I haven't gotten my act together to host some kind of event. And I decided to host a hike, and I'm very glad that I did. It was exactly the right thing for me to do. Like, this is the way that I should be doing AWP. Like, just come hike with me. Let's go for a walk in nature. Let's get away from downtown in this convention center. So there was a decent turnout. I think if I had done a proper job of planning and promoting it, we might have gotten a lot more. But there was probably about 8 or 9 or 10 people that showed up. We lost 2, Gene and Nutt. I'm looking at you. You were there, And then you weren't there. I never got an answer. I never got an explanation. I think there was something to do with heights. I think it was like afraid of heights. So the hike wasn't super technical, but I think for people who don't normally hike, might be a lot. I brought some hiking poles. Everybody was a good sport. I gave the hiking poles to Jenny Johnson from Houston. She used them to great effect. And we climbed in Griffith Park up to the top of Mount Hollywood. We got some views. It was a beautiful day. I brought some granola bars, some sundry items, which I kept in my backpack. And I don't know. It was just nice to see everybody. Got to meet Michael Wheaton of Autofocus Books, another great indie press. Got to meet him for the first time. I've talked to Michael many times, and, we're pals, but I've never met him in person. Likewise, I've never met Aaron Birch, but he came along, and I think he was hungover. I think he had a hangover. I didn't notice it. He powered through. Lexi Kent Monning, Elizabeth Rhodes, Mary Vessel White, I think is the name. It was a good group of hikers for the first ever Brad Listi Death March. And it got me thinking that I might do one for the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books. If people are in town, I might do another death march. So if you're coming to Los Angeles for the festival later this month, and that sounds interesting, it'll be in the morning. It'll be early, especially if it's on a weekend, like 7:30 or 8. But if you're up for it, email me. The address is letters@otherppl.com, or you can DM me on Instagram or Blue Sky. So on top of all of that, my little sister has been in town. She has 3 kids. She and her husband, they're on spring break, so they flew out. And it's chaos. My kids have been on spring break. They have 2 weeks of spring break. Like, since when do you get 2 weeks? And we went to Disneyland yesterday. Can you hear it in my voice? This is the voice of a man who went to Disneyland yesterday and was there until 10 o'clock at night. I got to say, though, the weather was great. It was cool. It was sunny. It got a little cold after sundown, but that's to be expected. It was a little chilly. But I'd rather have that than be at Disneyland when it's 100 degrees. And I have been at Disneyland when it's 100 degrees. I have been in like the Star Wars area, and there's a Chewbacca walking around in that fucking suit in 100-degree weather. And then I've seen the parade where these young, college kids, musical theater kids are singing and dancing, and they're in heavy makeup and polyester costumes, sweating bullets in 100-degree heat. Never again. So I thought it was going to be chaos because of spring break, but to be honest with you, that was probably one of the better experiences I've ever had at Disneyland in terms of humanity. Yes, it was crowded, but I've been there like one year. Oh my God. But, we live near Disneyland. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's like, a 45-minute drive from my house. And so when I have family in town, usually it's around the holidays, and you have young kids, inevitably it will emerge as a possibility. And I will never forget going to Disneyland on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. It was an outrageous crush of humanity. It's one of the worst, one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. Just body to body everywhere. Everywhere. You couldn't even move. So we did Disneyland. We did the whole thing. Kids were happy. Kids were exhausted. And then I guess my dog was with my parents while we were at the park. And then my sister and her kids get back before I do. And one of the little girls, my sister has 3 kids. She has a boy and 2 girls. One of the girls got bit by my dog, and my dog doesn't bite. Like, she's never bitten anyone except me. But I mean, not even angrily, just like, playing. But I guess like my niece, who's like 7, might have accidentally, like, I don't know what happened. I didn't see it. Nobody saw it. So I get home, I get to I get there to pick up my dog before I drive back home. And I'm exhausted. And they're like, oh my God, your dog bit one of the girls. So, I go back into one of the bedrooms and she's in there with her dad and he's like holding her. And it's like, it wasn't bad. She wasn't like mauled or anything. It was like a nipping, you know what I'm saying? Like a snap. And it like nicked her little cheek. So, not good. But I don't know what to do. And I'm like exhausted. I have to drive home. It's the end of a Disney day, People are just a little punchy. Dogs are violent. And then protesting. This big day of protest on Saturday, out in the streets with signs. Like, thank God. I've been waiting. This should be happening every day. Get out there. If you missed this protest, don't ever let yourself miss another one until this shit is over with. Until we've gotten ourselves onto higher ground. Put this country into a better way. This is outrageous what's happening. Don't be afraid to speak out. Everybody should speak out. Everybody should be, not everybody, but a lot of us. You know what I'm talking about. Get out there. I don't know what it's going to do. But at the very least, we will be in community with one another. Looking at each other like, what the fuck? Hold up some signs, express some anger and some despair and some dismay and some determination. It was good. It was good. Today's episode is brought to you by Simon & Schuster and Mary Sue Rucci Books, publisher of the debut novel Tilt by Emma Patty. Tilt is the official April pick of the Otherppl book club. That's my book club. Do you want to join my book club? I know you do. Just go to otherppl.com, the show's official website, and join the book club and get a new book delivered to your door every 30 days. I interview book club authors on this program. You heard that right. So I will be talking with Emma Patty about her debut novel Tilt, which has been getting all kinds of rave reviews in the weeks ahead. Tilt is about a massive earthquake that hits Portland, Oregon, and it's about a woman named Annie who is 9 months pregnant and at IKEA when the quake happens, and it's about how she navigates the ensuing chaos. Again, it's called Tilt, the debut novel by Emma Patty, the official April pick of the Otherppl book club, available from Simon & Schuster. So I do a weekly email newsletter. You probably know about that, but if you don't, you can sign up over at Substack, bradlisti.substack.com. And don't forget to check out my new company. It is called Deep Dive, and it is launching officially later this year. Deep Dive makes long-form educational audio courses. And the debut course from Deep Dive, due out later this year, is called How to Write a Novel. I'm the host of the course. I am the interlocutor. And the course features more than 50 hours. That's right, 50, more than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's leading writers. There has never been a writing course quite like this one, and I can't wait to share it with you. So check out Deep Dive at www.deepdive.audio. Sign up for the Deep Dive newsletter, and follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Blue Sky. Okay, so my guest once again is Sonya Walger. Her debut novel is called Lion, and it is available now from New York Review Books. Sonya is a British-American actress, writer, and podcaster. She began her career as a film and television actress in 1998 and is perhaps best known for her role as Penny Widmore in the ABC series Lost, and later for starring as Molly Cobb in the Apple TV original For All Mankind. She was a student of English literature at Christ Church College at the University of Oxford and she has hosted a literature podcast called Bookish, a fellow literary podcaster, and a longtime literary enthusiast. And Lion is her debut, and it is a work of autofiction about her relationship with her father. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. I loved it. It was right up my alley, and I'm very pleased to get to share my conversation with Sonya Walger with all of you right now. I should mention, and you will hear us talking about it, but Sonya lost her house in the Palisades fire, a few weeks ago. So she's been going through it, and we talked in the middle of it all. She was staying at a friend's house. She's got kids. Her life has been like totally upended, and then she's got her debut novel coming out. Like, you can imagine what has been going on in this woman's life, which is all the more reason why it is totally inappropriate for me to have spent the first 15 minutes of this episode complaining about how busy I've been, how stressed out I am by Disneyland. Meanwhile, poor Sonya lost her house. So, perspective. And my thanks to Sonya for making time in the middle of it all to talk with me about this fabulous debut novel of hers. So let's get to the conversation. Here I am with Sonya Walger, and her debut novel, one more time, is called Lion.
So we lived on a hilltop in Malibu, had done for 18 years, and we were this entire little community called Big Rock. It's a little canyon that doesn't go anywhere, so it's just a little no-through road, and 70% of the houses are gone, and mine is one of them.
Were you ever in danger? Were you racing to get out of there?
No, I wasn't racing. We knew, everyone in LA knew there was this huge wind advisory, so we knew the night before. I had bags packed. I had a hotel room booked for us in town. I didn't send the kids to school the next morning. We just thought there was big winds coming, but we knew it was high risk. We knew we lived in a high risk area, but we didn't. You just don't think it's going to happen. You just don't. I packed like we were going to Palm Springs for the weekend with some photos and my laptop. And we left at 10:30 in the morning, and our house was gone by 9 o'clock that night.
God, I'm so sorry. But your level of preparation and anticipation seems high. I think a lot of people were really surprised, or maybe people in that community or in that part of LA were sort of aware that when the winds kick up, like in a really dry season.
Yeah, when you live in Malibu, you actually have a responsibility to be on top of it. And we've lived there for 18 years. This is not our first evacuation, but it was the first time where I left feeling sick to my stomach, just because we'd had this wind advisory saying these are historic and once in a lifetime unprecedented winds. And so I'd wanted to leave the night before, and Davey had said to me, it's just a big wind, there's no fire. And I was like, I don't like it. It's a really big wind coming, and we live on the edge of a wilderness. And if the condition on our staying is that I don't send the children to school. And he said, fine, don't send them. So we didn't. And I said, if a fire starts anywhere up the entire coastline, we are gone. And he was in total agreement. And a fire broke out at 10:15 in the Palisades, and by 10:45 I had us out the door.
Man, that's crazy. And so how did you know that your house was gone? Did you, by 9 o'clock that night, did you have notification?
We didn't know for sure. It's sort of heartbreaking, actually. We had ADT, the security system, and I took so many pills and made myself go to sleep in that night because I just couldn't handle it any longer. But Davey stayed up and watched the ADT smoke alarms go off in every single room in the house, and then the whole fire alarm blaring, and then the house just went quiet, and then we knew.
Well, I am so sorry. And now you're staying with friends and doing a book tour.
It's a lot.
To have a book come out is already stressful. To have it come out when you just lost your house in a historic fire.
Mm.
That's I guess it's memorable at best. I mean, you could say that.
It's memorable. It is not the landscape I would have chosen for the release of my first novel. It feels oddly apt for a book that is very much about an investigation of what home, being at home in the world means, what it looks like, what it means to have a home, to create a home. I think my dad, the book is about my dad. If he understood anything, it was overnight reversals and things not being where you left them and recovering from devastating losses. I think my dad would have a rueful smile on his face right now about this particular situation. I've never felt him as close as I do, and I'm not particularly someone that feels presences, but I feel my dad around a lot at the moment. I feel him like with me in the trenches, not out of sort of heartfelt compassion, but more like no, I have walked this path, I've done this. I feel that very intensely, but it is a devastating place to be in, to just to be in. That's it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, having a book, people say to me, gosh, how are you doing this and having a book to launch? And I'm like, how are you getting through it and not having a book to launch? I mean, thank God for my book. It feels like between the book and my lovely kids, they're my life jacket. They just keep you buoyant when cold water threatens to drag you under. It feels amazing to be able to come out and talk about my book. And then every day, my email and my text messages from friends just who've read it and been moved, and or had a memory of my dad, or it awoke some vulnerability in them that they then want to share. It feels like waking up to a little Christmas stocking every day. It's so lovely reading people's responses to it and very uplifting.
Yeah. My mom lost her house in a fire.
Mm.
She was one of 9 children,
Oh my Lord.
and they were home. The parents were gone. My grandparents were out of the house. It was New Year's Day, and they had a Christmas tree that was still up, but it had dried out.
Mm.
And somebody plugged it in, like to plug in for the lights, and there was a
Mm.
spark, and it just went up like a torch. And so they had I want to say like 9 kids and friends. There were a lot of people. I don't know if everybody was home, but there were a lot of the kids were in the house, but they got out, but they lost everything. Same kind of thing.
Mm.
And then they had to disperse and stay with friends. And obviously they're not all gonna camp out in one place. So the whole family
Mm.
got separated, and some kids are at this house and some kids
Mm.
are at this house. But yeah, it's kind of part of my family lore, losing a
Uh,
house.
yeah, it is. And it's an interesting thing because, people ask me understandably constantly, how are the kids? How are the kids? And it's not that my kids are sentient, thoughtful, intelligent people and they're 10 and 12. They're not toddlers. But I keep thinking they don't know what they've lost yet. They just don't know. And it sort of connects to Lion this, you don't know until you're much older what it is that you've been through. You really don't. And you don't know what you've normalized. You don't know that what you've experienced is extraordinary because you have nothing else to go on. You're just going with your water. You flow with the riverbed, and where the riverbed takes you is where you must go. There is no alternative. And it's not like my children had um, agency beforehand. They've always been kids who just went where we chuck them in the car, and that's what they do. So it's not like the loss of agency is any great sort of loss for them. I they'll write books one day, or poems, or music, or art, and let me know what this was for them. Because I don't think it's being processed yet in the same way that it is for me and my husband, say.
Yeah. Children have like a resilience. Like there's like one of my favorite quotes from somebody was like everything really bad that happened to me when I was a kid and I could handle it. you know, the kids know how to deal in some way. They
I
have
think that's
the adults are the ones who are like really shaken, and the kids
the,
are just kind of bouncing around. But maybe
it's
it's in
true.
there somewhere, and they'll, like you say, down the road they'll be able to realize the trauma or define it in some way. But that's a lot, to lose your home and to be through this, to live through this great, like unprecedented tragedy in this city.
Mm.
It's just It's a big thing. So
It is.
I'm glad you're all safe. I'm glad you all made
Mhm.
it out, and I cannot tell you how impressed I am by this novel of yours. It feels like, as I was reading it, I read it with a sense of recognition, because I've written a book that was really close to the bone and was really kind of like there's a lot of emotional pain
Mm.
that I had to confront in the writing of it, just difficult stuff to try to make sense of. And it took me a long time to get it. And when I read this book, I was like, yeah, Sonya spent a long time working her way towards this book. I could be
Mm.
totally wrong, by the way, but that's the
Mm.
feeling that I got. Like this is years in the making. It's not a long
Mm.
book. What is it? 172 pages,
Mhm.
but it's just beautifully, beautifully rendered, and it just feels hard won. Am I barking up the right tree? Is it? Am I?
Yeah, that's totally the right tree. I mean, you know, I always say it's taken me 50 years to write it, and well, technically 48 because it's been waiting to come out for two. But yeah, I think I've wanted to write for a long, long time. I've written movies and screenplays and pilots and occasional short stories. I'm an inveterate journal keeper, so the writing has always I write. I'm always writing something, but always for myself. But I'm a huge reader, and so my love of literature has meant that I have always aspired to the novel. That's always felt like the highest art form and like something I'd love to do. But I just there was so much deference around it, around like I just don't want to write a bad book. I only want to write something I would want to read, and I hold the bar so high for what I like to read that I was hesitant, and this book came about because my dad died very suddenly in an accident, and my kids were very young at the time, and his life had been so extraordinary and so, unusual, and to say the least, that I felt like I just couldn't let all the stories about him disappear. There needed to be some record of it. And, I've had people say to me, "Oh, you should write a movie about him." And I've always been like, but if I wrote the movie, I'd be told to tone it down. There's just no way that this man would be allowed to exist in all his technicolor. And it felt like fiction was the only thing that would contain my dad. That was the only way, that was the only vehicle for it. So I just started writing, so the book itself didn't actually take terribly long to write, but the person that wrote the book took a long time to hatch, I would
Right.
say.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And you are also an actress. You're a screen actor. You've been in
Mm.
the television show Lost. I was reading about that, and I'm like, okay, this is an embarrassment of riches. You're a gifted actress, and you're also writing a book this good. But you have a education in literature, right? You went to school and
I
studied
did.
literature.
I went to Oxford. I was at Christchurch College and studied English literature there for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, so this has been part of your creative DNA, like going back to your school years. But it's impressive to me to be able to do both. And I'm wondering,
Thank
like,
you.
when it came time to sit down, the drafting process, you say didn't take that long. There were no like, were there false starts, or did you write a draft that didn't work and then have to reconfigure it?
I didn't write a draft as such. I've been sort of talking about this, and it's interesting trying to remember and dismantle what happened. But the book began because I have such a terrible memory. I have a really shockingly bad memory,
Me
and
too. Me too.
okay, good. My whole family sort of laughs at the idea that I would have written anything approximating a recollection of the past. So I went to my beloved journals, all of which are lost in the fire. But I went to my 27 years worth of journals, and much like I used to at Oxford with textbooks, I went with a highlighter and I just started highlighting stuff where anytime I talked about my dad, I'd highlight it and put a little post-it on it, and sort of assembled this collection of stories, moments, feelings, observations, whatever it was over the years. And then I kind of harvested them into a document where I just wrote down these little moments. And then I would go in and take one of those sentences or one of those paragraphs and sort of isolate it. And then I have no other image for this, and I'm not a potter of any kind, but it was working the clay. That was how it felt like to me. It felt like I was taking these little cold balls of clay, and then I had to sort of work heat into them and expand them into an inhabited moment of either this fusion of recollection and fiction, just pushing out at the edges of each one of these sentences in order to make it sort of bloom in a way and inhabit it differently. I think that's where the acting comes in. I'm used to sort of being a gopher that goes underground and pops up and looks at the world from a different point of view. So I worked these little beads, if you like, into something more fleshed out. And then had a file on the desktop, and it was called, I forget if it was called beads or if it was called the jar, but I would throw a bead in the jar every time I'd worked one. And I did not know how these beads strung together. I didn't know how they worked in conjunction with one another. I was very clear that I wasn't writing a memoir. I wasn't writing anything in sort of anything like a conventional biography, or I wasn't interested in dates. I wasn't interested in where he was born. I'm not terribly interested in proper nouns. If I could avoid, I think I avoided them all the way through, other than capital cities. I just am not. I'm more interested in the sort of essence of things than in the exactitude of proper nouns. And so I had this collection, and I just didn't know where they lived, and I didn't know how they lived in relationship to one another. And then my habit of journaling, I think, brought me to this place of, I do this a lot when I'm stuck with my writing. I just start writing about why I'm stuck, and I handwrite the first draft of everything. I say everything grandly. I've written 2 books and I'm starting on a third, but anyway, we'll say everything. But I handwrite, and a habit I have that's been very, very helpful for me is I make no distinction between the notebook, meaning the chapter as it's progressing, and my journal. It's all one. So I'll just draw a line and be like, I got nothing today. I'm miserable. I miss my house. My kids are driving me nuts. I don't know how this book begins. I don't know where it ends. And then somehow just the act of moving the pen on the page will push me into often some sort of flow about. Hopefully it'll go back to the chapter. And if it doesn't, worst case, I've written a journal entry that day, and that's also great. And doing that with Lion actually became this sort of interesting container for, there is an echoing here. There is a rhyme, an internal rhyme that's happening between these memories about my dad and how I was parented and how I am parenting my children. And that became the thread on which to string the beads, actually. That was the revelation. That and this discovery that writing in the present, writing in this continuous present. So, each chapter or paragraph begins, well, not paragraph, but chapter begins, I am 12, I am 45, I am 28. And then this continuous present was also a very helpful unlocking of what I was trying to explore, this sense of time being perpetual, repeating itself, enduring.
So, what about the tension between like autobiography and fiction? You're writing a book that is like heavily based on your father,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you're giving yourself permission to fictionalize. I think this is very familiar to me. I always say, people are like, "Why didn't you just write a memoir?" I'm like, "Because my memory sucks. I don't know." And I needed to make the book work. So can you talk about like the moments and the ways in which you fictionalized and the decisions that you made creatively around that, while also kind of hewing to a lot of reality, I would imagine.
Yeah, I always say this book is a work of fiction in which everything happened. So there's the decision to fictionalize felt very early and very unequivocal for me. I mean, yes, in part to accommodate my faulty memory, but also in the risk of sounding too highfalutin, but in its most philosophical sense, I really do believe that the act of writing something down is to fictionalize it. The massive schism between experience as we have it and experience as we choose to describe it is the act of fiction. I just, my story of my life is necessarily partial, which means it's fictional. It's not, it's only true to me, which makes it not a truth, not an absolute. It makes it partial. And so that to me makes it fictional. And you know, I think I knew I wanted to have these moments where I could go inside people, where I could, inhabit my dad lying in my not yet mother's bedroom and look around this young woman's bedroom that he's borrowing for Christmas, and he doesn't know who she is. And he's trying to imagine who she might be based on the trinkets in the bedside table or the smell of her perfume. And it felt so delightful to do that. And again, not a stretch because of what I've done for a living for so many years, which is to imagine what it's like to be inside other people. That would be forbidden to me had I chosen to write a conventional memoir. That's not part of the gag. And I knew that was an essential part of the book, was crawling inside these people and embodying them in different ways.
So this is a story about a young girl's coming of age. It's about her relationship with her father, who is a very charismatic, unpredictable. I don't know how to care. I was going to say hot and cold. He's like here, and then he's gone, and then he's
I
back.
think we can say neglectful and be generous.
Yeah, but also in his way, very lovable. Like there's affection that I felt in the writing and in the depiction of him. He's just a lot, but kind of an outsized character. Is there anything you would add to that? Like, how can we let listeners know about the father character in this novel, who figures so centrally into the narrative?
I think my dad is someone that, I always found that, and still find that I can only talk about him in lists. He was a racing car driver. He was a Formula One. He was a polo player. He was a cocaine addict. He was a serial lady lover. He was, he was a skydiver. He was an adventurer. And these are the things that make him sort of stand out and sound glamorous and exotic. And indeed they were. And there was this sort of heartbreaking repetition to his failures too, not just emotional, but in the world. He was Icarus over and over, not just once. And that makes him a very compelling, mesmerizing figure to have in your life. You don't necessarily want him as your dad, but as your godfather, I think he was great.
He could have been the coolest uncle ever.
Ever. But also there is so much of my dad in me, and I recognize that. And I think that's been an interesting path of sort of writing Lion and talking about Lion. And in fact, in this moment of my life, to find myself in and thinking, yeah, this grit that it turns out that I have, this resilience, in a funny way, this is what I trained for, was a moment like this. And I'm not sure that would have been as immediately apparent to me had I not written Lion and were I not talking about it at the moment.
And your mother.
And my
Give
mum.
Give listeners a sense of who she is. She's still alive, or?
Yeah, very much so. The opening chapter is dedicated to Mum. It's called Lioness. And I'm only in this chair today because of who my mum was, a single mum who not only endured the vicissitudes of this man, they split when I was very, very young, but never spoke ill of him, raised me just with the ferocity of a single mum's love, and but not at his expense. And I think that's what makes her extraordinary. But I also think that's what made it so necessary for me to write a book, because I hadn't been given the full amplitude of what we were dealing with and his, craziness. I think it took years and years for me to really understand oh, that's not normal. That part was really weird. and that and then and then you were gone for years, and then you went to jail and nobody told me. It's like living in a sort of dimly lit room and just being covered in bruises, and then as slowly someone turning the lights up. And you go, oh, there's furniture in here. I see. Oh, perhaps I won't walk into that one again. And it's been slightly like that. So, um, I say in the book, my mum is my rock, which is a not particularly inspired phrase, but it really is the one that I feel is the truth. She's the bedrock on which I exist, really.
Well, though you mentioned the opening chapter to your book, it's called Lioness, and it's about your mom, and it's again, it's kind of like there's lists,
Mm.
a kind of list that it opens with, where you're sort of describing all the things that your mother did as a single parent, and then here you are writing a book about the father who sort of wasn't around a lot of the time and didn't do like the lion's share of the parenting, if I can
Hmm.
say it that way. And so it's just a really interesting and affecting way to begin a book. I'm wondering, did that just shoot right out of you, or was it something that you had to work your way towards?
It's really interesting that you asked that. It was the last chapter that I wrote was that,
Ah,
and I wrote it almost in one sitting. That I barely touched it after I wrote it. It really came out like a sort of incantation, and I thought it was, I thought it was really interesting we that my dad I would describe to you as I already did in nouns, and my mum is all verbs. And I think that is the fundamental difference between them.
so yeah, I mean, that was a something that you recognized as a result of having written the book? Or do you know what I'm saying? If you wrote this chapter last with this very like verby like list of actions that your mother took as a parent, uh, like that revelation that dad was nouns and mom was verbs. That was something that you got at the end.
I didn't know. I find myself out on the page. I don't know what I am until I write it down. I think that's part of my journaling habit. And I really only noticed that at the end of having written that chapter of Lioness, where I thought, oh wow, look at that, mum's mum is all action, and he's all static nouns that refer entirely to him. They're none of them about parenting. And parenting, as we all know, parenting is a verb. It is not a noun.
Yeah, it's like an endless to-do list,
Yeah.
which the first chapter of your book attests to. And
Mm.
you were raised in the UK.
Yes, I was raised in London. He was from Argentina. He lived in London for a while, and then he married a Peruvian and moved to Lima, and then he married an Argentine and moved back to Buenos Aires. So I have lived um, traveling back and forth, shuttling. But my school and my home life and my background is very much English.
And so as a kid, you are like the way that it comes off on the page, you're shy, you're bookish, you're really hungry for attention from your dad. You're thrilled by his presence and always wondering like when he's going to come back to you. It's very heartbreaking to read about like young Sonya Walger
Hmm.
growing up with this father who is living much of the time halfway around the world. Like, is the rendering on the page close to the reality?
I think it is and it isn't, right? It's fiction, and it's necessarily partial. I don't think I was particularly shy. I mean, I was not an outspoken kid, that's for sure. But I was also a happy kid who had birthday parties and went to the movies and got drunk and had boyfriends and a fully functioning kid. The question, and I've tried with my books to, if not go in with a question, then emerge with a question that the book is then in response to. And the question of Lion was, what does it mean to have been this man's daughter? And that was the question I was hoping to interrogate, if not answer. What that question is that's the prism that I held up to the light, which means that the refraction is only in relation to that question. The book isn't about me going on, fun ski trip with a good friend and her brother to the top of a mountain in Austria, because that's not in relation to that question. So the portrait of a young girl who is bookish and an only child and retreats into books and is nervous to admit to either parent of how homesick she might be is true and is not the only true, right? That's therein lies the fiction of it, I think.
And you've gone on to become, in addition to being a writer, a successful actor. I'm curious to know how you like think of that choice and that path that you've taken in relationship to the relationship that you had with your father. Like,
Hmm.
and all the different identities that he had, right? All these
Mm.
nouns. Like, is that seems like a kind of training, right? If or just like the right genetics for an actor, or is that not how you see it?
It's interesting. I hadn't considered it in that way. I think acting to me felt, emboldening and unexpected. I think there was some small revolt on my part. I think it was uh, not necessarily what anyone expected of me after leaving Oxford and getting a first and doing very well in all the exams. I think having been a pretty obedient kid, there was probably my own rebellion involved in becoming an actor and having this adventurous life. I think also there was a piece of me that's always felt that even though I am English and have been to all the English sort of schools and things, I have always felt outside it, the system. I have always felt like I don't fully belong. I am half Argentine. My dad is not like your dad's. My upbringing was not like your other middle class English upbringings. And acting allowed me to embrace that, to use that, and to be different. Most actors have, not all, but many have had an unconventional childhood and are drawing on that in some way. And that sort of maverick quality is a piece of what makes them perform. Again, I'm generalizing grossly, but in my experience, that's often been the case. I think what's happened is that slowly over the years, I've sort of outgrown the need to rebel, and so I see acting more and more for what it is, which is this extraordinary opportunity to try on someone else's life for a moment. Um, but it's felt increasingly limiting as the years have gone by. I've felt more and more like, but I don't want to play just this part. I want to play all the parts. Why can I only say these lines? That has felt very just, yes, limiting. So to finally get to a novel where I can be everybody and play all the parts and tell you what they're not saying and inhabit the sort of caverns behind the faces they present, it just feels such a relief. It just feels such a relief. And to be really nuts and bolts about it, just the autonomy. I mean, to be 50 and, a parent and choosing what's for dinner and booking holidays and to be so fully fledged an adult in the world and then have this strange part of your life where you're waiting for the phone to ring for somebody to tell you what your next job is just so infantilizing and debilitating. And
Yes.
growing increasingly thin. It was just like, I just can't do this. I can't keep doing this. This isn't what a grown up does. So time to make things. So that's where I am. Now I'm just making up for lost time. Now I'm just furiously writing as much as I can because I feel like I left it so late.
Yeah, I've always thought about that when it comes to acting. It's one of the only like, and especially I guess as it compares to writing, because somebody's got to give you permission to be able
Oh,
to do your art.
totally.
That's crazy.
Yeah. No, and I think of any other art form you can practice in a room on your own. You can paint, you can practice your violin, you can, you know, anything else. You can do your gymnastics, but you but acting alone in your room is certifiable.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get out of Oxford, you decide that you want to become an actor, and then what do you do?
Well, I was very fortunate. I got a very good agent while I was still at Oxford. So I started work almost immediately. But it was not easy. It was not easy at all. In fact, it was sobering because I'd had this very predictable experience until then, which had been if you work very hard and apply yourself to something, then you get the desired results. So I'd got my top grades for A level, and then I'd got into Oxford, and then I'd worked very hard there, and I'd got myself my first class degree, and I'd done enough plays, and I'd got a top agent, and so I walked out into the world feeling like, great, you work hard, and then you get the lead in a BBC drama. And it just doesn't work like that. And you've had all this preparation for getting into college, and absolutely nothing and no one prepares you for leaving it, especially when you leave it to go and become an actor. The free fall was immense. I mean, I just remember going for my first audition and leaving being like, oh, that was good. Great. I should probably pack because I'm probably going to get the call telling me to go to Zimbabwe this week. And the just astonishing bewilderment when it didn't happen, and it didn't happen again, and it didn't happen again. And nothing had prepared me. Nothing had prepared me for this much rejection. And no one in my family acted. No one. So no one could understand it. And everyone kept scratching their heads going, are you sure you don't want to become a journalist or a lawyer or something? And I kept being militantly saying, no, this is what I want to do. Anyway, it came together, and I worked, and I started doing lots of theatre, which was great. And then little bits of drama and TV shows, and then an independent movie that was being shot by an American who then asked me to come and tape for his pilot. He was doing an HBO show called The Mind of the Married Man. And I auditioned for that and got that. And that was 26 years ago. So I came here to shoot The Mind of the Married Man, and it ran for 2 years. And I never left. I just stayed and got American agents and have kept working over here.
And does it get easier? I mean, it does get easier as you. No, it doesn't.
No, it's nonsense. It never gets easier. It never gets easier. It hurts just as much. And I would say it hurts just as much even when you're 50, and then you just feel so foolish because you're like, oh my God, really? Have I still not learned not to take it personally? So I think people that tell you that it gets easier are either lying or have found a technique that I haven't yet to uncover.
And you were also on the show Lost. That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah, it was very special to be a part of something historic. I mean, it was a. I think we knew at the time it was a big deal. It certainly had its fan base, but it's rare to be on a show that's a big deal that then continues to have a lasting impact. And I think that is one of the shows whose legacy continues to be felt in television, and that is special to have been a part of that, no question.
So what was like the legacy of Lost? And forgive me, I'm really bad at TV, but the legacy of Lost in terms of its impact on subsequent shows, like a lot of shows are drawing from it. Did it set some kind of template, do you think?
Yes, I think it did. And again, I'm not the person to ask because I don't watch television. I just read books. I'm an appalling actor in that regard because I never know anyone. I never, agents will ring me saying, "Oh, this director wants to meet you," and I don't know who they're talking about. I don't watch anything, so you'll have to forgive me. We can
Well,
talk in
no,
depth
we're
about.
the same. We're simpatico on that level. I don't know. I've got my hands full with books. It's not that I
Me
have anything against it.
too.
I don't have time.
No, I'm the same. I'm the same. And it's just as the older I am, the more I'm like, there's so little time. I'm not going to waste it watching something when there are so many books I still haven't read. So yes, the short answer is yes. Lost and these sprawling storylines and the ability to, devote whole sections of a season to or different characters and then jump between them, the sort of genre bending, all of these are tropes that were pretty radical at the time and that are being used. I couldn't tell you by whom, but by plenty of shows today.
And so Lion is what, your second book? Is that right?
No, Lion's my first.
Oh, Lion's your first, and then you have another one that you've written?
I have a second book called Wife House, which is coming out in the spring of next year.
Oh, wow. So you've been busy.
I was busy. Well, I had nothing to do. Lion got bought, and then we had to wait for nearly 2 years for it to come out. And so I thought, it was mostly to prove to myself that I wasn't a one-hit wonder. Not even that this is a hit at all, but just that I could finish a second one, and that I didn't only have one book in me. It was mostly for me that I sat down and was like, just quickly do another one, go on. And I did, and Wife House came quite quickly came together. I knew the story very early going in, and so that one came quite readily. And then that, as I say, we start editing that I think this week, but it's due out in I think it's February of next year, and that's being published by Union Square, who are part of Hachette, I think. And then I'm now working on my third one, which is proving incredibly hard, and I could blame the fires. I'm going to blame the fires, but if in real candor, it was hard before the fires, and now the fires have made it even harder.
Well, but at least you have the fires to blame. And I feel like
I
you've
have
got
the
to,
fires. Very
yeah,
good.
you've got to
Yeah.
write about the fires. I think the writing about the fires seems inevitable based on like just my sense of how you work, or no.
Yes, they are. They are. I mean, they're all. I've had to begin a new journal, and of course, that's all I'm writing about. I don't know how they fit into book 3. I don't know if they belong in book 3. I don't know if they're a separate book. I don't know where they'll come, but I do know that my journals are the path back to me writing again. So I'm just diligently showing up on the page every day.
I feel like I could see a movie based on Lion. And it's funny because you said earlier that, you couldn't write it for the screen because your father was like too outsized of a character. Nobody would buy it, or they would tell you to tone it down. Having written the novel, I'm wondering, like, has there been any interest in the film rights to this book?
Casual requests. We'll see if anyone comes through with it. I don't know. That would require someone else's vision, someone else's eyes, I think. I don't have that scope on this particular book. Wife House is different, and I see it much more as something that actually I could see it as a sort of miniseries. Lion is what it is to me, and it would take someone else to hold it up to the light in that way for me to understand the book in that way.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting because, like, when things are at the conceptual level, and it's like, yeah, I'm working on this book about my dad, and he was this crazy character who, was a Formula One driver and a cocaine addict and all the things that you listed earlier. Somebody sitting there listening to it might be like, okay, well, that's, that might be too much, or you need to tone it down. But then once you actually write it and people can hold it in their hands and read it and really get a feel, sometimes it becomes easier for people to understand how it could work. I'm kind of hoping for it in a weird way. I was thinking that as I was reading it. I'd love to see. I don't know who would play him, but maybe you
No,
have.
we'd need Javier Bardem or someone as charismatic and amazing as that. We really would.
So when you start writing Lion and it kind of flies out of you after all these years of like psychological, emotional, and spiritual preparation for the task, and then you've got it into form, like, did you have a literary agent? Like, what did it look like from the point of composition to the point of acquisition?
Well, first of all, it did not fly out of me. I want to be very clear on that. It didn't fly, but it emerged. In its creeping way, it came. I did not have a literary agent. What I have is a wonderful manager who has been by my side for 20 something years. And John is probably one of the most well-read men I know, and as bookish as I am. And invariably, our text threads are always about book recommendations to one another. And he's helped me, for years through all my career, and helped me with all, the screenplays that I've tried to set up and the pilots. And he's said to me for a long, long time, these are great. This is wonderful. And I can't wait to set it up. But what I really can't wait for is to read your novel. And I've always felt like, excuse my French, but fuck you. I'm not writing a novel. Get me a job.
Right.
Who's writing a novel? Not me. And then COVID hit, and I would, teach lamentably my children via Zoom on their, terrible Zoom teaching situations in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I would just retreat into my lovely little shed where I used to do my podcasts. And I would just start with these beads and the journals and the sort of harvesting. And I started writing Lion during COVID, and I finished it just as we were coming out of COVID. And the first person I sent it to, before my husband even, I sent it to John and said, "Here it is. Here's the damn novel. You now what? Now over to you." And John read it and said, "I have no notes. Can I send it out to some literary agents?" And I said, "Oh, okay, let's do it." And then I got a literary agent, and Mia is wonderful and has been in my corner from day one and just loved it. And then we got into
Mia whom? What's her last name?
Mia Vitale. She's at Parkfine and Brewer, they're called. And yeah, I'm just deeply grateful to her. And then we got it into the hands of NYRB, and I couldn't be more proud to be published by them. That just felt like the cherry on the cake.
Yeah, they do great stuff. And the cover of this book, I have to ask you about it because I just love it. And it is,
Isn't it great?
it's just
It's
great.
such a good story too. Do you want the story behind
Yeah,
the cover?
well, let's start by describing it to people who are listening so they can get like a visual. Like, what does this cover look like?
So it's a sort of 70s, at least that's the wash in it. It's probably the 80s or 90s. Photograph of a man falling headlong in a white jumpsuit from a Cessna plane. And he's forming an X shape as he falls. And there's just something utterly headlong, free, untethered about this human moving through space. It's thrilling. It's utterly thrilling, the cover. And the guy is called Jacques-André Istel, and he is the father of the freefall, they think. He's the man that invented not pulling the chute when you jumped out of a plane, or not pulling it for as long as possible. And this is a vintage Sports Illustrated photograph. And when NYRB sent me the cover, we'd gone back and forth on a few, and I had full approvals, and I knew we hadn't found it yet. I just knew it wasn't. I knew I would know it in my body when we found the right cover. I knew I wouldn't have to think about it. I knew I would just know. And when they sent me this photo, I just knew, and I immediately wrote saying, "That's it. Amazing." And then they wrote back saying, "The trouble is, it's much more expensive than any any photograph we usually use. It's sort of double what we usually pay for a cover. And I'm so sorry. And here are some other photographs of skydivers for you to look at." And none of the other photographs were right. None of them, not by a long stretch. It was only this photograph. And I turned 50 last year. And so I went to my husband and I said, "I know you've been looking for a birthday present for me. Would you give me the cover of my book for my birthday present?" And he said, "I'd love to." So I went back to NYLB and they very handsomely said, "No, we'll go halves with you." So this is my birthday present, this cover that you're looking at.
I can't think of a better 50th birthday present
Nor
than
can
that.
I, right?
How
It's as
lovely.
good as it gets. It really is.
And it's just, yeah, it's just so striking. And the title Lion, the single word, like landing on that.
Yeah, that took a minute. Again, it happened. The same is true at Wife House. I knew I didn't have it yet. I'm a big walker. I walk and walk and walk, and that's usually how I begin my day. I'll drop the kids, and then I'll go for a really long walk, and I'll start thinking about, the next chapter or whatever. And I do voice memos on my phone, and then I come home and start typing them up, and then sometimes that tricks me into writing. As you can hear, between journaling and the voice memos, I have to sort of seduce myself back to the page every day.
Right.
And that's one of them. And not knowing the title was sort of haunting me. And then, but I knew, it's just like with the cover, I just knew I would know it. I knew I wasn't going to have to strive for it, that this was not something to be white knuckled through, that I would just know it. And Lion just came to me. I was just like, "Oh, that's it."
That's it.
Yep.
So was there a considerable, like your manager didn't have any notes when you gave him the manuscript. I'm curious to know how much editing the manuscript went through once it had been acquired.
Almost none. That's pretty much the book I wrote. It really
Wow.
is.
This thing is like a diamond that had just been, it's like, like It's like, what is it, coal that gets compressed over time?
I think so. Yes, it certainly won't be true of Wife House, and it definitely won't be true of whatever book 3 is. But this one did. This one came out. This one just came out as it was meant to, I think.
Have you ever been skydiving?
No, never will. Not for me. Have you?
Once.
How was it?
It was cool. I've been bungee jumping once and skydiving once, and bungee jumping was way scarier
Yeah,
because
the rebound.
the ground rush. It's the ground
Oof.
rush. Like with skydiving, it's like almost like nothing. You're just like, oh, like it's surreal because you're so high up and you don't
Yeah.
feel the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But with bungee jumping, like the ground is racing toward you, and that
Mm,
is
mm,
disconcerting.
yeah. No, you are a braver man than I. I couldn't countenance any of them.
Well, and then Wife House is the second book.
Wife House.
And any hints as to what that's about? It's about a wife in a house.
Mm-hmm. It's about a woman who leaves her family. It takes place in the space of a calendar year. It opens with her hosting a Christmas lunch, and it ends with her attending Christmas lunch as a guest of her estranged family. And it's told through all different points of view. So each chapter moves through the wife, the husband, the children, the lover, the best friend, and then so it's sort of the prism keeps shifting as you move through the year, and you hear from all the different members of this little tribe and how it's fragmenting.
How did this come together? Where do you have like a point of origin, or can you?
I do. I had I think COVID was such an inflection point for so many families and couples, and really put under duress, all of us. And so I had friends who left their families, and it was so stunning and arresting and heartbreaking for everyone involved, and destabilizing for those of us that weren't breaking up, too. I think every time someone in your immediate environment makes a radical choice like that, you can't help but question your own choices and be like, oh, should we? Are we okay? We're good, right? I think it throws all of those things into question, and I I think it was the actor in me who was like, wow, I would be so interested to climb inside that moment and that choice and what would lead to that choice. And historically, I think women who leave are treated so poorly in fiction. They're all, dying of arsenic or on railway tracks or, banished. And I was really curious to write something that was a more fully fleshed, rounded point of view of everyone. I wanted to hear from everyone. It's like I say, I like playing all the parts. So I wanted that to be a part of this narrative.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, God, COVID, and then these fires. Like life is hard. There's a lot
Yeah.
coming at people, and now we're living
Yeah.
in this time in America where I feel like we're in the upside down, or there's like a
Yep.
kind of demonic possession that has taken hold of like too many people in this
Yep.
country. And
Hmm.
it's a lot to process. And I went through similar things like in our social set of like that pandemic hit, and then there was, I think, a compression that happened where people had to be inside of their domestic spaces and together, and
Mm.
like many couples didn't make it. And I can't stand stories of breakup. I
Mm.
I recoil. I don't like them. I think that's my greatest fear, is that I would
Mm.
screw up my marriage.
Mm.
It's very precious to me, and so it's like I don't like the idea of it even being possible. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like to be
I
confronted,
do.
that's hard.
I totally agree. I think it is. I think it's. I can't do anything but agree. I think it's devastating. I think when the fire happened and we were all huddled in this hotel room, it's such a clarifying thing and it's so banal, but it's true, which is why it's banal. I just kept feeling like the worst thing didn't happen. The worst thing didn't happen. All the people that I need are in this room. And that would have been the worst thing. Um, And I really believe that. I again, it's banal because it's true. There was a worse thing that could have happened, and it didn't.
That's right. That's a healthy way to look at it. It's like
Mm.
probably you might have to work to remind yourself of that at times because it can be
Oh
it's just
yes.
it's so inconvenient. I cannot imagine losing my like, just to have to be at the whims of other people, like, putting you up and to be in their space and to not have your own place, like, it's just I guess you just gotta roll with it. I mean, have you learned anything about yourself in this process? About, like
Nothing I didn't know. Nothing I didn't already know. It's terribly confronting of one's own shortcomings, I've got to say.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, yeah, nope, I'm still an asshole by the end of the day. And I'm really tired. And I am, you're just a raw nerve. I think that's the piece there. I wish how Victorians wore a black armband to denote grief. I really, really wish there was some physical way. I feel like us fire families should wear a red armband for the next year
Yeah.
because then you'd just be afforded that little bit more grace that you really, really need. You just do. I don't, the microaggression of the lady in the post office or the annoying person at the traffic light is tripled, quadrupled when you are missing a layer of skin, as all of us who've lost our homes are. Our buffer is gone, our reserves are gone. So when my kids don't, brush their teeth, it just feels like a calamity rather than a minor grievance. and and that's the really confronting part is God, I'm just rubbed raw.
Yeah, you poor thing. I mean, are you gonna like, what you don't have to get, like, into, like, all the details because 'cause I'm sure it's like a Byzantine process, but, like, insurance-wise, like, are you gonna rebuild? Like, do you have a plan, or are you gonna get out of America since you have, like, UK citizenship? I think are you an Argentine citizen too? Like, do you
Oh
have a
God, yeah, nobody's going to Argentina. Jesus. I mean, if we think Trump's a mess, let's please not look to Argentina
right,
for
right, right.
for any guidance.
We're running out of places to go, but at least the UK has, like,
We really are. Yep, the UK. No, no, because Davey and I just love sunshine. I'm afraid it's really as trite as that. I just don't think I could go back to being in England where it's still dark at 4 o'clock in the middle of April. It just isn't going to work for me. So no, we're here. We're here. We will rebuild. We will rebuild because financially we have to, and there's no selling this burned lot that we're still paying a mortgage on. So we will rebuild, and we will decide then whether we live there or not. It's one of the most beautiful spots on earth. I say that completely empirically. It was just miraculous where we lived on the top of a hill overlooking the ocean with trees everywhere. And it was very, very special. It was this little spot that is just outside the city. And so you could still be in the city very easily, but it was just a quiet, quiet little canyon. And Malibu sounds, again, sort of hyper glamorous. And this was not. This was just like living in the country, but you could see the ocean from everywhere.
ugh,
So it's hard to imagine not living there, but it's also hard to imagine living there. So this is the upside of the fact that it's going to take years to rebuild, is it's going to give us years to make a decision about what we do. And in the meantime, it means on the downside, we are renting for years, which has, never been in the plan. But we are also trying to make an adventure out of it. We lived in that house for 18 years. We were country folk who, just had people over and had people up to swim and went for walks and, occasionally went to the Malibu Pier for pancakes. But we lived on the top of that hill and everyone came to us. And now we're suddenly overnight city folk who walk up the street for dinner and go to the Mexican, and I run up to Whole Foods and I walk to the post office. And the Londoner in me is like, oh, I remember this. This is nice. I
right,
walk. I
right.
do. I do things on my feet, and the children are loving it. If this had to happen, they're at a good age for it. My 12-year-old is delighted by the autonomy of being given $20 and told to go and get hot chocolate and a croissant for breakfast. She's thrilled with that. So we're trying to make this into an adventure that our family did not choose, but that we could choose to frame it that way.
I can't think of what else to do, right? I mean, what
Yeah,
else are you gonna do? You gotta find a way to make the best of it and make it
that's
into,
right.
like, some kind of I mean, it is, I guess I don't know. I was gonna say it's like a learning experience for your kids, and it is that, but it's not a learning experience that anybody necessarily needs to have your house wiped out.
No, nobody would have chosen this. Nobody ever would have chosen this. But choosing or not, there's only one way through. And again, it's sort of what Lion taught me is, well, these crazy bad, or not intrinsically bad, but these crazy surreal curveballs come at you, and what are you going to you can choose what to make of it, and that does not mean that you bypass the grief or the pain or the trauma. It doesn't. I think you have to fully inhabit that, but you do get to choose how to thread the beads afterwards.
That's beautifully said, and, having threaded the beads and written this book, and now it's out, and, it's kind of in the rearview mirror, right? It's not entirely yours anymore. It belongs
No, it's
belongs to readers, and that means, like, I guess, on some level, like, you and your family and your father in particular, sort of belong to the world or to the
yes.
readers of this book. Like, how does that feel?
Honestly, it just feels like a gift right now. It really does. Again, I'm sorry that's such a sort of trite turn of phrase, but to to watch other people pick this up, to get photographs of people reading it on rocks in Costa Rica or bookstores in Maine, or this, it's quietly thrilling in a way that TV and film aren't. They're so immediate, those mediums. They require immediacy. They require you to watch them and consume them in in the time that takes, and you need box office numbers for that weekend, and really the opening weekend is all that counts. And I just love the quiet unfurling of launching a book. The watching it, just it's just like putting a message in a bottle, and then it proliferates out, and then suddenly there are hundreds of messages in bottles all washing up on different shores. I have no experience of this, I really don't, and I'm more moved and honestly more grateful than I can tell you in this particular moment to get these little messages back from people and readers who've been moved by it or enjoyed it or encouraged to write something of their own, or re-examine their relationship with their family. I think it's what you hope. It's what you hope your books do. It's what you hope art does.
Yeah. I always say, like, if you take the time and go through the trouble of writing a book, what's sort of surprising to me in my own experience is that you don't need a ton of that sort of thing in order to feel like it was all worth it. Like,
Mm.
I can get, like, a nice email or 2
Hmm.
and just be like, "Okay, good, I'm glad. This person clearly needed this book and it found them or they found it, and that, like, deep connection was made and it offered them, like, a moment of, uh, connection or insight or whatever it is, that books do to us when we read them at the right time." I'm fine with that. I don't need, like, a million of those, you know?
So true. It's so true. It's exactly right. It doesn't. My agent asked me the other day if I wanted to know my book sales, and I said, absolutely not. No, that's not the metric by which I'm judged the success of this book. I don't I don't want to know. There isn't a number that will feel good. Unless you're going to tell me 2 million copies sold, there isn't a number that's going to feel good. So don't tell me. The metric I'm going by is these lovely intermittent emails, and the gentle feedback from people is really moving.
Well, I know you're getting photos of people reading it on the beach in Costa Rica and all these I could send you a photo of me reading it in my garage, but I don't think it's gonna do much for you.
I'd love it.
You'd be like, "Well, this is a guy in his, sweatpants reading a book under a blanket in a recliner." That's basically me.
Sounds great.
That's my life. But I will tell you, I will be recommending this book to people. It's a beautifully written book, and, all the hardship that you're going through right now, to have it be buttressed against this book coming out into the world, but also I feel like you, like maybe creatively finding yourself or finding like a new way of expressing yourself or a second act or any way to characterize it. You know, you had this successful career as an actress, but you have this like deep love of literature. That's like sort of that's like your true love. It seems to
Mm,
me anyway. I don't know if
mm,
is that the way you see it?
definitely. No question.
Yeah.
No question.
And so now you are like embarking on this literary career and you're in your 50s, and I find that inspiring. I'm turning 50 this year. And
Mm.
so I just think that people listening who are like, "Oh shit, I'm 35, it's too late." Not true.
Not true, not true. Get writing, get painting, get making the things. My God. Oh my God, no. I feel so thrilled to have landed on this, to have this friend to escort me through the next half of my life. I feel delighted with myself. I really do. I feel like, God, this was what a lucky thing to have this and not have to be panicking about yet another wrinkle or grey hair or gained pound, because that'll reduce yet more my chances of getting a job. I mean, the indignities of getting old are bad enough, but without being an actor as well. So listen, I'm delighted to act. I will. There are great roles out there. I'm sure I'll do more of them as and when they come up in the future. But to not be relying on that for my sort of creative fulfillment just feels radical, and electrifying is not too strong a word.
I will make a prediction that the work that you do in literature is going to wind up there's going to be a synergy between like screen acting and film and television, like one or the other, and the books that you write. I just think it's because it almost has to, because you have this training as an actor and all of this experience as an actor and telling stories in that way. It's going to inevitably filter in to your books, I would imagine. You're going to write
Mm.
something that translates. That's my prediction.
Okay.
So when it happens, you can just be like, he told me, he knew.
I'll let you know.
Such a delight to talk with you. Thank you for making the time amid the backdrop, with this backdrop of loss from the fires. And I hope that you're enjoying the success that this book is having out in the world. You certainly deserve it. And I congratulate you on its publication.
Thank you so much, Brad. This was a complete pleasure, and honestly, it's a real delight to have such a thoughtful conversation, particularly in this moment. So thank you for having me.
Okay, that was Sonya Walger talking with me about her debut novel, Lion, available now from New York Review Books. It's an excellent novel, an outstanding debut. Impressive that this is the debut. It's really, really masterful. And you can find Sonya on the internet. Her website is sonya-walger.com, and you can follow her on Instagram. One more time, the book is called Lion. Lion. Go get your copy right away. Read it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Otherppl Show wherever you listen. If you haven't done that yet, hit the subscribe button and follow the show on social media, Instagram and Blue Sky. Sign up for my newsletter over at Substack. And if you love this show, you can join the Otherppl Patreon. Show your support over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this program going into the future. If you want to join my book club or get an Otherppl sweatshirt or a t-shirt, you can do that at otherppl.com, the show's official website. Check out my new company. It's called Deep Dive, and the website is www.deepdive.audio. The company and its first audio course, are officially launching later this year. So check it out. And you can follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Blue Sky. If you have 2 minutes and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Rate it, review it. It helps the show find new listeners. Okay, so coming up on Thursday, I will be back with my friend and co-host, Mira Gonzalez, for a brand new episode of Brad and Mira for the Culture, our weekly roundup of all things popular culture. Mira is a millennial. I am Gen X and old, and I don't know very much about popular culture, and Mira teaches me about the nuances of reality television and whatnot. It's a hangout show. It's loose, and it's just for fun. It's a break. It's meant to be a break in your life. We can't always be thinking about serious shit. We need time to just let go. So check it out, Brad and Mira for the Culture, coming up on Thursday, God willing. Stay tuned.